I am the chess strategist, and today we're going to win another chess game. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our daily rapid speed run. Today we are going to be playing another 10 plus 5 game. In the last game, we did play the Roy Lopez, and we were able to exploit positional weaknesses and gain an advantage and convert our win. And I feel like that game was a really good illustration of the power of well-developed pieces on great squares. So today we're going to be playing another game, and I'm hoping to show you guys another opening that you can play with the white pieces if we get white. And if we get black, then I will be showing you some more stuff with the black pieces. So let's see what we get. And of course, I have been taking a few days to just think about content and understanding what I want to make and understanding how I can make the content better for you guys. So I haven't been uploading nearly as frequently, but I'm going to continue to upload as much as I can. Here we get the black pieces. Our opponent is Palso74, and they play e4. And today, I think I want to play a different opening that we haven't played before. We are going to play the Caro-Kann defense. The Caro-Kann defense is a defense against e4 that starts with the move c6 on move 1. And in almost all cases, you're going to be playing d5 on move 2. So opponents put pitons in the center, and we play d5, the Caro-Kann defense. And the Caro-Kann defense is not known for being a super aggressive opening, but it is a very sound, solid opening, very solid positional opening, and you get strong positions pretty much immediately, and you get interesting pawn structures as well. So here, our opponent has exchanged their e4 pawn for our d5 pawn, and we get a pawn structure here called the Carlsbad structure, where our opponent has a c pawn, and we have an e pawn. And so, by that means, what we're going to do is we're going to play mainly for development, and we're going to play on the queen side, as well as using this open c file. So one thing I'm noticing here is, in the Caro-Kann, you want to develop your bishop outside of the pawn chain. And here I think f5, bishop to f5 is an excellent move, so we're probably going to go for that right now. Notice that this knight is not presently creating any sort of threat because our queen is protecting the square. And our next few moves are going to be very simple. One of the first ones we can do is e6. But first, our opponent has given us a check, and we want to cover that check. What's the best way to cover the check? Well, there's a few different ways. I like our bishop. I don't want to retreat it. Well, one thing we can do is just develop our knight to c6 here. And of course, if we exchange, then we do gain the bishop pair. And we also gain another c pawn. Now, c pawn is nice. Why is the c pawn nice? Because if opponent trades, we're going to be able to play e6, and eventually we're going to be able to push c5 and challenge our center, or challenge our opponent's d4 pawn in the center of the board. Here, our opponent is attacking the pawn twice. They're also attacking our bishop, but the move we were trying to make anyways is this move e6, which adds a defender to our d5 pawn and adds a defender to our bishop as well. And as we can now see, we are threatening this c2 pawn with our bishop, and our opponent is going to have to respond to that threat. And from here, our development is very simple. This is one great thing about the Caro-Kann defense, is your development is not rocket science. You're going to develop your knight, you're going to develop your bishop, and then you're going to castle to the king side of the board. And you're going to have this open file for your rook, and it's going to be very simple. So, here we notice the pin on our knight, and our knight would be attacking this pawn if not for the pin. So I want to eliminate the pin. I know this knight is definitely going to go out to this square, and I want to reserve movement of my bishop. I could go to d6, of course, but if our opponent decides to pin our knight, I would like the option to play bishop e7 as well, which is a very solid move. Bishop e7 just negates the pin, which is not like super annoying, but I'd rather not have that pin be a factor. And yeah, we're seeing here our opponent has kind of wasted a move with bishop to a4. and I'm not really too concerned about that. One thing we do see here is we have the option to develop our bishop here to d6 if we'd like. And I'm going to take a moment to consider that option. If we develop the bishop d6, are we really worried about this? I mean, yeah, it is kind of annoying, the pin on the knight. I would like this knight to be able to jump into the center of the board. The bishop on d6, though, is an excellent piece. But this bishop is restricting our control of this square. Let's just be safe. Let's play bishop e7, just defend. We can always reposition our bishop if we need to. We will lose a tempo, but this is not a position where we're struggling for tempo. And here our opponent has decided that he wants to probably play g4 in the near future, which is an interesting concept in my mind. He wants to be able to knock our bishop away, but our bishop is just kind of chilling here. He's taking a lot of tempo. Also, we can jump our knight to the center of the board at a moment's notice. Here, I'm going to notice that we do have the opportunity to just castle. Are we scared about a pawn storm of any kind on the side of the board? Not really. I'm just going to castle my king out of the center of the board. Noticing that the pawn storm is not really too big of a deal. If he plays g4, we can drop our bishop back. We can also drop our bishop onto this square here at a moment's notice. And yeah, I'm just really not that concerned about our opponent's threats here. Here, one thing we can do is create another threat. Now that we've noticed that the pin is gone on this bishop, or sorry, on the knight, now that our king is castled, our knight can move freely, and we can attack this weak c2 pawn. Our opponent does not have very many ways to defend it here. The diagonal has been weakened permanently by this move d4, so our bishop is basically penetrating through this weak diagonal. Our knight is attacking, and this bishop is going to be able to be knocked away. So we are able to establish control over this square, and eventually our rook's going to come here and we're going to have full control of the file. That's the idea. Our opponent has the e file, we have the c file, and we notice that our e pawn is actually pretty well protected by the f pawn, but his c pawn is really just not a concern. Okay, so here our opponent goes for a very odd looking move. Bishop to h6. Now when your opponent makes a move like this, you need to always consider your options first. If we take what is our opponent's idea, well, I presume his idea is that he wants to give a check along this file. But are we scared of that check? Well, if we take, he gives a check on g3 and we scoot our king over, we're going to be gaining a tempo and we're going to be able to put pressure on our opponents immediately, and our king is rather safe here in the center of the board, or not the center board, on the side of the board, because these pawns are going to be protected by the bishop. The rook, we're able to scoot over, and our opponent is not going to have a dark square bishop. So I'm not seeing our opponent's threat here. I might be missing something, but I'm just going to take this bishop. It doesn't look to me like our opponent has made a good move, although it is tricky. He decided to sacrifice a full piece in order to gain some sort of compensation. The compensation, of course, is he has a small attack on our king. Wow. And our opponent just resigns. Very, very interesting. Golly, well, I was not expecting that. That was a very interesting move from our opponent, and apparently he doesn't have enough confidence in it to keep playing. So, yeah, okay. Well, we will be doing some analysis here. I want to show you guys what I think of this game, even though it is quite short. We might do a second one. Yeah, I still kind of flabbergasted that our opponent made that decision. But our opponent played e4. We decided to go with the Caro-Kann defense. Now, the Caro-Kann defense is not known for being as aggressive as the Sicilian. But, you know, sometimes your opponents need to be given a little bit of rope. You know, you don't need to destroy them, knock them off the board. you give them a little bit of room to attack you, and they might show you that they're not capable of doing that, and you get a larger advantage because of it. So here, our opponent plays what's called the exchange Caro-Kann, where you trade pawns on d5, and you get this Carlsbad structure. Now, the Carlsbad structure is very interesting. A lot of the times what happens is opponents want to play c3, and you want to play e6, and that way you get the 3-pawn chain. But here our opponent refused to play this move c3. He developed his knight immediately. And this move, knight c3, and in exchange Caro-Kann, or in the Carlsbad structure, the structure is called the Carlsbad because it comes from a different opening that's called the Carlsbad, but this pawn structure is just called the Carlsbad no matter what opening it comes from. It comes from the Caro-Kann, but it also comes from London system positions, and it also comes from Queen's Gambit positions as well. So this is a very interesting pawn structure to know because of the varying ideas. But here our opponent plays knight c3, and this is a big no-no in these kind of positions. As you see, the position's already equal. Black is already completely equal in this position because of the fact that he's developed his knight. See, white has a small advantage here. Developed his knight on c3. This is not the knight you want to develop first. We decided to develop our bishop because we want to get the bishop outside the pawn chain, and then we want to play e6. That's the main idea. And our opponent does correctly give this bishop e5 check. We play knight c6, the best move. Opponent develops his queen. And developing your queen is just not a great idea because it does create 2 threats, but if both the threats can be parried with e6, it really wasn't that great of a threat to start. And the engine says that queen back to d1 is the best move. So wow, kind of interesting. And rook immediately to c8 would have been an interesting try here. We decided to go for knight f6, developing our knight. And we played for very simple themes. The theme was we want to be able to capture this pawn in the center of the board, use our knight. How do we break the pin? Well, one way to break the pin and get our pieces developed is to just develop our kingside. Kingside knight develop, kingside bishop develop. We developed it here. And then castle your king out of the center of the board. And then all of our pieces are going to be active, and our opponent's pieces are going to be kind of aimless. So that's what we did. We just developed our pieces, and we made an uncomfortable threat. We made this move, knight to b4. Now, knight to b4 is a nice move because we noticed that while we solidified our pawn chain, our opponent's pawn chain is still very disconnected. And this pawn is very weak. Our bishop is permanently targeting it, and his bishop is forced to defend. And if we could add an attacker, you can see that there's no way for him to defend that pawn. Like, there's literally no way. His queen can only access... The only square it would be able to do that is from e2 or d1, but it's been blocked off by this knight. And all the squares along this diagonal have been controlled by our bishop. So we saw the opportunity to make an attack that he couldn't defend against. And our opponent just kind of just moved his piece, I guess. I don't know if it was a mouse slip or whatever, but he decided that he wanted to sacrifice his bishop. We took it, and he realized in this position there's really not much for him to do. We tried queen g3 that we calculated, would just result in our king scooting over. And I was talking about him not having a dark square bishop. Now that we've taken here, this pawn structure is very weak to dark squared attacks, because all of our pawns are on light squares, you see. But since we have the dark squared bishop, we have the knight, and we have all of our pieces on the king side, our opponent really isn't going to be doing much. And the tempo that he gains from giving us a check, we're going to regain by rerouting our rook, and this was just going to be a massacre. I mean, rook's going here, our bishop is going to be able to take here. Our knight, we're already winning this pawn with tempo against the rook. We're going to be able to develop our other rook. We're going to invade. This is going to be a massacre in the center of the board. And on the king side and the queen side, I mean, we're going to win all sides of the board because of our opponent's mistakes. So I think it wasn't premature for our opponent to resign there. And I think this was a very instructive game. Just the idea of, I've talked a lot about attacking and counterattacking, but here you can just defend in the Caro-Kann. You can play very defensively, play very methodically, and your opponents will sometimes just trip over their own feet. And that's what's brilliant about chess, is you're able to play a bunch of different styles and be able to be victorious through a bunch of different means from different openings, and you get different types of positions based on what you like. So I think this was a really instructive game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to continue uploading videos as regularly as I can. And I'm super excited to keep playing some more chess. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and see ya!